So, if any of y'all had questions you wanted to ask about how the game works, I'm happy to clarify some things. Or if you had somebody asked about which like box or boxes are good, we could chat about that. And then if anyone wants to you know, step on deck to play some games, that's cool too. So,
Yeah, I'm always going to advocate for season two at least, which I think is the best season, but is maybe not the one to start with. I'm always going to advocate for Lucia's box,
mhm.
which is
I think it's
really
very
nice
solid.
to ease people in. Um, in my opinion, it's the best season two box.
I like it a lot. I think these characters are not super hard. Like I think Cyrus is the most complex of them.
Yeah, um, and like you have a really strong character who's really up there in Seijun. You have your Iakis if you want to do just giant power swings. You've got Lucia if you want to be tricky and move around a lot. Cyrus is just Cyrus. He's a ranger. He does what ranger things. Um, Overall, the season two boxes, though, I feel aren't necessarily laid out in a way where I feel like this box got all the beginner friendly characters.
That's pretty much what I said, right? Like
Yeah,
I think that's actually how I have the difficulty listings, um,
yeah,
which were a joint effort. But like, yeah, Yakuza,
yeah,
Seiji, and Cyrus I have all as being the second difficulty tier, and then Lucia as the first. So I have them like
yeah.
this.
Yeah. The I mean,
Actually, I'm gonna reset
if
the module
someone's
real quick,
starting
and then
Exceed and is buying Exceed, I'm always going to recommend Season 3 because it
yep,
is so much more approachable.
yeah, learning the system of Exceed is definitely easiest in season 3. Um, so let's see. In terms of complexity, um, I have Lucia as being on the easy tier, and then like Yaquis, Seijin, Cyrus, and they're all one box.
Yeah, like that box is. If I was going to introduce anyone to Exceed Season 2, that's the one I would pick.
hmm And then
Um,
your mileage may vary. I actually put Eugenie up here, and then Jeffrey, whatever, and then
yeah.
Seika. And I've definitely heard some people not agreeing with my placement of them as
Um,
as
of
being.
all of them, I think Eugenia is probably the biggest one that I would dispute. But that's just because she doesn't really play Exceed like an Exceed character.
hmm Oh, I should group them by boxes. I should group them by boxes.
Yeah, she's a controller, and that's what she is.
Yeah, to me she's like very much secondarily that, and she's very much a brawler who like folds that into her playstyle, but she's weird. Mostly, I think that she's very approachable to just kind of look at your hand and play your cards, and it works. Like, I don't think that she
I
needs.
suppose, yeah. Like she doesn't need to have a master plan. She can just
Right.
do her thing and be her, and it's fine.
Yep. I also listed this one as being second tier difficulty. I might have to renege on that just because I've heard so many people ask questions about his Exceed ability. I think like barring his Exceed ability, he totally is second tier
His
difficulty.
exceedability isn't necessarily mechanically complex. It's just unintuitive.
Yeah, it's just unintuitive. Like people, it doesn't do what you think it does, and that is a significant issue for
Yeah.
understanding a character correctly. And
Um,
then,
but for the most part, his attacks are pretty simple. You don't need a real master plan. You just,
yeah,
hey, these seem like good attacks.
jump around, don't get hit. Like
Hmm.
it'll work. Um, third difficulty is populated by.
I think an entire box.
Oh, not quite. That's
Um,
so two boxes are split between third and fourth basically. Because this has,
yeah,
in my, this is just my estimate. Like obviously this is very subjective, but this has Renea from the Hunters and Demons. Whoops, that's
yeah.
um
That Uh,
We're gonna pretend that didn't happen. Uh, um,
the playmats are doing a different weird thing now. But that's
not
fine.
what I meant to do. um,
Uh,
yeah, I meant to move the life counter out of the way.
yeah.
But yeah, so this is the Hunters and Demons. Um, and
Yeah.
who else did I put in here? I guess it would have to be Eternalist or Taisei. I had it listed as Taisei. I'm not sure if that's...
Um,
It's supposed to be like
Taisei.
complexity tier as well, like how hard they are to pick up. Taisei might deserve to be in the hardest category, because sometimes you just explode and die and you have no idea what to do about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like Taisei is in that sense not beginner friendly, but he is. You look at him and you know what he does.
yeah, and that
Like
is
he
valuable.
burns life to
That is
kill you.
valuable. Yeah. So let's see. So that's one box that's all difficulty 1 and 2. And then here we have the Church versus Empire, which has Jeanette down here. And Minato down here. Um, and so it has 2 super easy characters and 2 super hard characters. Oh, actually, hold on. Minato's not Church versus Empire.
No,
Taisei is
Minato
Church versus
is.
Empire. Taisei is Church versus
Yeah,
Empire.
Taisei is. I think Minato is Hunters?
He's a demon. Yeah, he's Hunters and Demons.
Yeah,
Okay.
because he is a demon
He is
car.
actually a demon. Yeah. No, stop moving. Okay. Yeah, and then there's Zoltz.
Zolt is Churcher's Empire?
No, he's in this box. He's in this is the Hunters
Oh,
versus
right, he's
Demons
Hunter.
grouping. He's a hunter. He may be pretty darn evil, but he's a, sanctioned, certified hunter. He's got a license and everything.
Hmm.
License to kill. All right, where did I put Imogene? I put Imogene. That's not Imogene. Well, okay, where did I put them? I put them down here, for better or for
Yeah,
worse.
that's a promo, because.
Yeah, they're off to the side. And then I put Imogene, like, second tier.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my difficulty estimates.
Yeah, but I don't actually know how season 3 was retailed. Was it retailed in the boxes of 4?
Season 3 is retailed in boxes of 4. Yeah, it is 3 boxes of 4.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for that one you just get Ryu and Ken first, and everyone else comes next.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, if there's anything that's iconic of Street Fighter, it's the box with Ryu and Ken on it.
I mean, wait, hold on. With Ryu and Ken, Ryu and Ken are only together in the demo deck. They're in actually separate boxes.
Oh, are they?
It's a Ryu box, a Ken box, and a Chun-Li box, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
If I remember right.
I mean, all of those are fine.
Yeah.
Street Fighter is super easy to pick up. Basically, whoever you pick up, apart from like, I don't know, maybe Akuma.
Yeah. So.
Um,
Oh man, I don't even know who's in which boxes. I think Ga's in the Bison box. I know the best box, unambiguously, is the one, totally objectively, is the one that has Dan in it, and it also has Vega and Viper and somebody else who's probably just decorative, but it has Dan in it, so that's the best box canonically. Everyone knows this. Oh, that must be the Chun-Li box.
Yeah.
So Ken is also the Bison box. I don't know where the rest of these people go. I'll just pull them out. I don't remember what the box groupings are for them.
Yeah.
But yes, that's the best box. That's all you need to know. Although, admittedly, I say that, but Akuma's one of my mains. I like Akuma a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm not an enormous fan of Street Fighter overall. But if I was introducing the game to someone, I would definitely play. Street Fighter.
Yes, I feel like the Ryu versus Ken matchup is like the platonic ideal of Exceed learning matchups.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I might also play like
Sweet.
I don't know, like Chun Li versus Ryu would be fine.
That's fine too.
Um,
So Senpai Chan asks where to find deck lists. So there is an Exceed wiki that is attached to the Reddit if you're a redditor. If you have Tabletop Simulator, you can open up a module and look at the decks that way. And you can also look at the frame data site by Talking Chicken from the Discord, found here. Dropping link in chat. See you, take my lunch.
yeah. I believe that one is also pinned to the Discord.
Yes, it's so there's a pin in the Discord channel, General Exceed, which is here's a bunch of player resources, and then I'll pin this post. And if you click that link, it's like I go up and I edit
Yeah.
those posts periodically to add new player resources.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So yeah. I mean, overall, I wouldn't recommend starting with, like the fact that it was the first chronologically because there's a lot of nonsense.
Sorry, what? Oh, you wouldn't like what?
I wouldn't recommend starting with season one because there's so much nonsense in it.
But it's often also the cheapest one to find because
That is true. It was the easiest one for me to find because Exceed didn't do particularly well with my local store,
Mhm.
and so they didn't end up ordering in. They ordered in, I think, one of each box of season two, one of which is still there, um, and none of season three.
That's unfortunate.
Um, it's unfortunate, but I live in a pretty small city, so it was not unexpected. There's not really a big scene there for games like this. There's more of a scene for Euro games.
Gotcha.
So something like Argent, easy to find,
Oh, really? Huh.
whereas other people have reported sort of the opposite.
Yeah, there's not
Uh,
much. Well, there's actually a lot of board game communities around where I am. Specifically at the store that I go to, though, it's a lot of casual, like party games get played there, and then there's like the CCG gamers, and there is a
yeah,
Euro population, but they mostly hang out at a different scene that is still local, but
yeah.
not the same store.
The place that I go to is a sort of board game cafe type thing. So it's very much Euros and party games.
Yep, yep,
And the CCG store is somewhere else.
yeah, different, different scene. Yeah, basically the where I go is a CCG store, so like
Fair
there
enough.
are people who play Euros there, but that's not really what the majority of the scene is. Although
Mm,
it's always interesting to walk in, like, I show up at the store in the morning, and I'm like, oh, people are setting up a game, and then I leave at midnight, and I'm like, so are y'all done? No.
yeah,
I saw a
yeah,
13-hour Twilight Imperium stretch. Of course, that puts Euro to shame as far as game duration and complexity.
yeah.
That
That
thing
is,
transcends
it's
drama.
enormous. I look at Twilight Imperium and I go, "You're not playing a computer game."
Wait,
And
is there a computer
I get
version?
the. No, there isn't, but it
Oh,
is sort of in that sort of 4X
oh yeah,
genre
yeah, the
of
4X thing. Yeah, that's right. Expand, explore,
yeah,
exploit, exterminate.
exterminate.
Okay,
Yeah, the
kill the other dudes.
but because effectively it's Civ in space. Um, so
Yeah, there you go.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
civilization. That's
yeah,
4X.
I look at it and go, why aren't you playing one of the sort of dozens of space Vs that exist on computers where you can do it in your home and don't have to spend 3 hours setting it up and 4 hours tearing it down?
Yeah, it's a heck of an investment.
Yeah,
Saturn
but
asks, how is Seventh Cross balanced against other seasons when you have those powerful transformations? Well, that's actually a very interesting thing. So transformations are powerful, but having transformation in play means you don't have that attack in your gauge. Also, it means that to some extent your deck is going to be drawn to or centralized around the transformations that you want, making it more predictable which attacks you're trying to land and when. If you don't care which attack you land, and you just want to land an attack, it is harder to play against your specific threats. If, for example, I'm rimless here, and I swing at range 4 or 5, let's say 5 actually, she has one thing that hits at range 5. It's got a really good transformation on it, it is suddenly super face up. And by face up, I mean
Yep.
very obvious when I'm playing. So
Yeah, and if you cross, then she doesn't get to transform it, and she's
yep, and she's extremely
bad.
sad. So like
Um,
part of the balance is that like whiffing a transformation tends to be more of a problem than whiffing just any old attack, which means people commit to them harder and they get played like these become centralizing even if they're not big damage. Um, and that like itself shapes what they do. And then the transformation effects are like things that you had to work to get, right? And they effectively cost you a gauge because you don't get gauge instead. Gauge is a very powerful resource in Exceed. The characters who can get Gauge easily are balanced around this, with effects that require it, with effects that cost them tempo. Uh,
yeah. Well, it costs you either gauge or it costs you hand.
or it costs you hands.
If
Yeah, it costs you
you
both copies and a turn, um, which is also non-trivial.
and quite a lot of flexibility
Yep.
because you have to do both cop.
Yeah. And until your reshuffle, you don't have the attack at all. So if it was a decent attack in the first place, that doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
The other part of it
Attacks
is
with good transforms also tend their stats tend to be kind of mediocre, like Irradiate, which look at those stats. Those are not good stats.
yeah, it has one good stat on it. Its range.
Yeah.
And then the power can be good, but it's too slow for it to matter most of the time.
Yeah, if you fear the power, you dive or assault in. No longer.
Yeah. The other part of that is that Exceed characters are balanced around their transformations. Like most of them, you can play without the transformations, and like you can just like you can add your attack to your gauge instead of transforming them, and it's gonna be just fine because that gauge is valuable, and good ultras are good ultras. So like you are really gaining something when you gain a transformation, which is why it costs you the gauge. If you take gauge instead, you have gauge. Gauge is really useful. Um, but the effects on them require you to like they have requirements that are significant. Very few of them are just free upgrades, and the ones that are tend to be the
Yeah.
weakest ones. So here you go. One of the it's a very good transformation, but it's still one of the weakest transformations around. Like
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if I need to go get something, I can do it.
mhm.
But yeah,
So
it's
Saturn, the ability to exceed easier with your transformations is what is there to counteract the fact that you don't get gauge, and it's why their exceed costs are more expensive. So like Galdred has an exceed cost of 6. If you have transformations, you only have to hit with 3 attacks. The normal gauge cost for a character as of Season 1 and Season 3 is 3. So like his gauge cost is very, very comparable to a Season 1 or Season 3 character's gauge cost. So it doesn't actually make your transformation, or it doesn't make the flip easier. It's that the flips are more expensive because there are transformations in the deck. Um, the normative cost for Exceed in Season 2 is 5, which is basically 2.5. Like this means 1
you
gauge,
still
3
have to hit with
transformations.
3
You still have
attacks.
to hit with 3 attacks, or you still have to do 3 things. Like, and
Yeah,
you
you have
also
to get 3 cards either transformed or in the game.
yeah,
Uh,
and you need specifically to have
2
um,
transforms in the
2
gauge.
transforms in a gauge, or it requires more gauge, which is a significant cost. In Season 1, people who learned the game in Season 1 learned very quickly that, like, okay, you strike with block on offense, that's free gauge. You find your best above curve things that can't get crossed out, that's free gauge. And then if you have to, you strike with block on offense again, because in Season 1, Exceed modes are very, very, very good. So you learned how to just ensure that you would get your gauge. In Season 2,
Yeah.
this is much, much harder.
Some characters in Season 2 also just don't care about exceeding, or can play perfectly fine on front side, and don't want to flip as soon as possible.
Yes. You're looking at one of the worst examples of this. Well, I'm teasing, actually. Zolt, it's not that Zolt is not playable on front side. His front side is fine. It's just that his flip gets crazy.
Yeah.
But, like, Rimless
Uh,
is a fantastic character. I don't know where I left her, but
yeah,
take my word for
she's
it. Wherever she is, she's fantastic. Oh, there she is.
she's great. But the exceeds tend not to be straight upgrades in Season 2.
Yep.
Remless is a fantastic example. She loses the ability to automatically EX all her attacks.
Yep. Yeah, so her front side is you can EX anything she wants, and it's crazy good. And then her flip side is her EX attacks become absurdly terrifying. But she doesn't get to have infinite EX attacks. So you have to already be ready to unload with whatever EX attacks you've built up, which is a big deal.
Yeah, and the attack she wants to do that with are ultra attacks, which means she needs a lot of gauge to make it happen.
Okay, I mean, one of them is ultra attack. I'm very, very happy to do triple triggers on Ground Zero and Napalm Stream, because these are 10 and 14 damage respectively. Those are pretty
Fair
bonkers.
enough. Fair enough.
Okay, let's see. So, somebody just asked, oh, my window's glitching. There we go. Senpai-chan asks, how old is Exceed? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's been around as long as I've been in the hobby, which is a few years.
Yeah. Okay.
Easiest way is probably just to find copyright information on the season 1 character.
Oh, good point. I was just gonna look up when the Kickstarter happens.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. So Kickstarter. Okay. Looks like. Wait, is that season 1 or 2? Okay, so mid 2016 would have been, which yeah, that checks out because I played it for the first time in 2016 when I went to Gen Con 2016, and I got beaten up by Brad in a what do they call it, a bye in the tournament when I wasn't playing. Yeah, so I wasn't playing, like there's a round I wasn't playing in the tournament, and so Brad, the designer, fought me off to the side, and it was amazing. I got destroyed. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Andy, don't feel like obligated to stick around. I enjoy having you here for the chat, but like no pressure.
No, not at all. I love to chat.
Awesome.
It is much less stressful than playing against you.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah,
Senpai-chan says, the people teaching made you think it was older. I mean, the Level 99 games community has been around for a while, since like 2013 or so, kind of growing steadily, and BattleCon's been around about that long.
Exceed also kind of exploded and got a legacy very, very quickly.
Yeah, Exceed, it took off well, and it helped that a lot of the BattleCon players played
really
Exceed and then
signal
developed
boosted
opinions,
it,
and a lot of them converted it wholeheartedly. It piggybacked to some extent, and now it's really taking on a life of its own, because the first season of Exceed was Red Horizon, which relatively few people have heard about. It has fans. Like, people know this property, people look at these characters and are like, oh, I know who these people are. But it's a much smaller following than something like Street Fighter, which is basically globally recognizable.
The fact that you can get Capcom to let you do it is an indication of how successful Exceed has been.
Yeah, it's definitely done well. How is the competitive scene for the game is the question. Well, first let me answer the easy question. Saturn says, it sounds like you want to Exceed unless you have duplicate cards in your hand or it's not worth it. That is basically correct. She also has a few specific tricks that she can use to set up EX attacks in different ways. One of which being the boost that says, you're attacking an EX attack, and another being a transformation that says, if you have your attacks in your gauge and your transformation area are EX attacks, the other copies are EX attacks. So those are the other ways that she cheats that. Okay, so now for the harder question. How is the competitive scene? So, it exists. Like, the competitive scene is centered around convention tournaments. The online scene doesn't have nearly as much competitive activity. There's a lot of casual activity, but like a lot of the competitive players either snatched up or let themselves get snatched up in playtesting, which means that there's less time for just like tournaments, like actual tournament activity. I know that there are local competitive scenes in various parts of the world. Weaver is the screen name of somebody who runs one, also Cyan, who has runs tournaments locally. There's a tournament scene in Bellevue College, I think it's called, in Washington, U.S. But yeah, like the official big tournament events are at conventions 2 or 3 times per year. So there was one at PAX Unplugged Last year,
I think Gen Con's the
and
biggest
Gen Con's the
one.
big one. Yeah, so Gen Con is what we call Worlds. So every year at Gen Con is like the World Tournament for Exceed. We call it the World Tournament. It's, you know, in Indianapolis at Gen Con, but it's still like the biggest tournament we have. Last year it was standing room only. Um, like, I forget if it was like 16 or 24 people, but I know that it's like sold out, and there were people standing around watching. That was also true of BattleCon. It was great to see. And then, so yeah, PAX Unplugged and Gen Con are the two main tournament things. We also have presences at other cons, of course, but like those are the ones that are like these are the big level 99 sponsored tournaments where you can get store credit, but like play mats and things and whatnot. Is there a list of local competitive scenes? So, not really. Because Level 99 doesn't sponsor directly, like those tournament scenes. They have the official tournaments at right now. I think it's just PAX Unplugged and Gen Con. We'll see if that list grows, but fans, you know, set up their own stuff. So like you can look on the Reddit where there's a Reddit thread on how do they say it, like Reddit slash r slash
Yeah, r
exceed.
slash exceed.
Yeah, r slash exceed, which has like people posting their general area so that players in the same groups can kind of be like, oh, let's meet at this game store and fight. Um, and then for other properties, the only other properties that have like competitive scenes are BattleCon and Pixel Tactics. Pixel Tactics is so distributed that I don't know. Like I haven't heard of any really significant tournament scenes. Like people play the game casually all over, but I don't know of
Uh,
any like main tournament things
Pixel
because
Tactics also has PTO,
oh yeah, PTO and PT yeah the
which is technically, I think, in a pre-alpha state, but it's playable.
yeah the
You can definitely, I believe there do that in the Pixel Tactics pins.
I don't know if it's pinned or not, but like
Uh,
if you drop a note over there, sooner or later somebody will hook you up with a way to get into that if you want. Like it's
yeah,
technically pre-alpha, it's gonna get probably rebuilt and stuff, but like it's playable and there is a competitive community that enjoys being competitive at that game. It's just like not super active because that's not a project that we're actively developing right now, or at least not in the public-facing sense. Um,
yeah.
Simpichan,
Um, and then of course there's BCO, which
yes.
you can go on there a ranked queue. I'm not sure how full the ranked queue is, but I've definitely gotten a few matches in. So it's not hard to find matches, although it's going to depend on hours.
Yep. Yep, your time zone may vary, as with all things. But yeah, the VCO community, especially if you post in the VCO Discord, like somebody will notice that and probably hop on if it's at the time of day that they're on. Like that seems like the most reliable way to ensure that somebody else hops in queue, because people won't just sit in queue, you know, waiting for someone else to hop in queue for too long, which is
Yeah, but there's a looking for games channel there. You know,
yeah. So the
you
ranked queue is slow.
ranked queue is a little bit slow, but the quick play queue, you can usually find a match within minutes.
I think they actually converted it out in a patch recently.
Did they?
Yeah,
I haven't been paying much
because
attention.
I
I've
think they
been
were worried about the queue splitting in exactly the way that we're describing. So they like didn't want to have people in one queue and people in another queue, and then for games to take even longer to match for that reason.
yeah, a queue without match
So yeah, so come to think of it,
making
maybe
anyway.
that's what maybe that's what the solution was with that. I don't know. I'm a little bit behind the times there.
Yeah, I've been paying more attention to Exceed and secret things.
Yeah, see,
But yeah,
many wonderful secret things.
but yeah, there are many things. There are many ways to play level 99 games
Hmm.
online or in your local area.
Hmm.
Um,
Saturn, if you don't mind me asking, just very vaguely, like what area is that? Just in case I've heard of somebody. Um, Kansas City, Missouri. Okay. Amusingly, my friend from Missouri that I know plays Exceed lives down here now. So, yeah.
um, D knows basically everyone who's ever looked at books.
I know a lot of folks. That doesn't mean I have the best memory though.
True. Um, but yeah, if you check the Reddit, that's a relatively large city, as I recall. You can probably find people if you check the Reddit, or if you check Discord, then you can probably find someone around.
Mhm. Yep, and if you have Tabletop Simulator and you're interested in playing on it, you can virtually always get hooked up with a game.
Yeah,
Depending on time of
Tabletop
day.
Simulator also goes on sale like every 2 weeks, so
True enough.
it's not super expensive. It's less expensive than a single box of Exceed. So,
That's kind of funny.
um, and then you can download this excellent module, which D maintains, and which is excellent.
Well, thank you very much.
Apart from some match shenanigans that we're still working on.
They don't explode anymore.
Yeah, if you unlock them, they do something weird, but we're not going to do that.
It's not too bad. It's way less dramatic than it used to be.
Yeah.
It's barely noticeable. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It used to explode much more
Yeah.
vociferously.
They used to very explode. Just leave it at that.
Everything on the table and between where the mats are kept and where the mats go used to fly up in the air, and it would create an enormous mess.
Yep. But everything is fine, and that will never happen again because I know what I'm doing.
For the most part.
Yep. So let me jump back. BattleCon. What's the relationship between BattleCon and Exceed? Are they competitors? So Saturn mostly covered this. Yeah, they are like explicitly not competitors. People who. So, as someone who came to Exceed from BattleCon, right? As many folks did, I looked at Exceed, and I was like, why would I need this game? I have BattleCon. And I played it, and I'm like, this is strictly worse BattleCon. If you want it to be BattleCon, it's strictly worse BattleCon. If you want BattleCon to be Exceed, it's strictly worse Exceed. They are, and it took me like 5 games to start to grasp this, but they are so radically different that it's actually remarkable that people confuse them. But they totally look very similar. It's like, oh, you're 2 characters, you're fighting on a side.
Yeah,
like
you have all the same stats.
Yeah.
You have power, you have speed, you have range.
Yeah, you look at the cards.
Handled
and it's like,
mostly the same way.
Yeah. You can kind of go down the line. And got all the things, movement and stuff. But the thing is that like Exceed is fundamentally a card game about resource management. BattleCon is fundamentally a strategy game.
About reading your opponent's minds.
About either depending on who you ask, it's either about reading your opponent's mind or it's about like setup and positioning, and just like pure calculation. Depends on how you play. Different people do different ways. Like they're both fantastic games. BattleCon is probably the less complex game, but it always feels more complex than Exceed because BattleCon
every
loads its complexity.
Every board state for BattleCon, every turn you have to make a decision. Your opponent has 14 attacks, you have 14 attacks, and you have to do the matrix in your head.
Yep. Because in BattleCon it's like a multiplicative thing that you have to figure out in your head all of your possible options and all of your opponent's options. And mind you, as you get more experience, you will quickly learn heuristics, which are decision-making shortcuts, to winnow them down into just a few options and then pick from those. But when you're not experienced, the game is overwhelming. So BattleCon has a higher barrier to entry for new players because it's really easy to get overwhelmed by the number of things you have to think about. Exceed takes all the things you have to think about and it hides them in a deck, and you just get a few of them at a time. And it makes it a lot easier. So,
yeah.
Exceed is much more approachable. Exceed is also a game that doesn't feel as bad to lose at because you can go, oh, I just got screwed by the deck. Like, I didn't draw the card I needed at the wrong time.
Sometimes you wild swing and it doesn't work, and it was supposed to work, and oh well.
Yeah. And, like, I strongly subscribe to the notion that, like, luck doesn't have much to do with it whatsoever, and that if you need to blame luck for losing a game, it means you didn't change cards enough, or you didn't... Like, I feel like, generally, I don't think that it has much to do with it. But I'm very, very glad that the game is structured in such a way that people can feel like they just lost because they got unlucky, without it feeling like they lost because the game was random. Just like, oh, I had an unlucky streak, but it's not going to happen that way very often.
Yeah, one unlucky thing is rarely going.
Yeah, one unlucky.
You have to get unlucky repeatedly for luck to make you lose.
Right. and a little bit of unluck is nice for people to fall back on, like, as a cushion for salt, right? Because, like, oh, well, my opponent got stupid lucky. There's only so much I can do about that. You don't feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I lost because it was my fault. In BattleCon, every bad thing that happens to you is 100% your fault, and you'll know it.
Yeah, because everything is deterministic. You should have known that thing was coming and played the thing in your hand that beats it.
Yep. In BattleCon, it comes down to that, and that's why the folks who are the best in the world at it are exceptionally skilled at math and calculation.
Yeah.
One of them is a
Well, they do
teacher.
matrices in their head.
Exactly. And the people who are the best at Exceed overlap with those, but are also
Yeah,
folks
but they're
who,
good at probability.
yes, but there's also leaning on the odds and probability, and just knowing when to push and when to hold back in terms of managing your resources and minimizing. Like, there's a lot you can do outside of just raw calculation, of of just doing all the math on a single turn. It also means Exceed games are faster, and that is a big help to not being overwhelming.
Yeah, and no calculation, like no single calculation, is gonna win or lose you a game of general. Like
Yeah.
if you're in a situation where where probability is going to kill you, you've probably put yourself there.
Yep. Which it's something I enjoy doing, but with
Yeah.
with one exception, there's one character in the game who is so fragile that you really can get horribly screwed and have nothing that you can possibly do to react. And in a very small number of cases that can be true, but he is built to be that way. He is the character that that if you walk into a game and you're like, yeah, I might die in 3 turns and have nothing I can do about it, but if I don't, oh yeah. Yeah, so there he is. There's the boy. There's our man, Taisei. Your life begins at half its maximum. Taisei walks into the arena and cuts himself in half. So you know what you're walking into if you pick Taisei. You are walking on the thin red line, as a friend of mine refers to it.
And if you don't get enough gauge to exceed, by the time you die, then you die.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you exceed.
Yep, and if you do exceed, you are terrifying, because you have an attack that says you are immortal for this turn. Your life can't drop below 1, and also if you hit the opponent, you gain life for damaging them. And then he has a ton of ways to pour more damage on. Like, this guy is rightly terrifying. The drawback of playing him is sometimes your opponent gets cards that hit you, and you don't get cards that hit them, and they deal 15 damage before you get to play. But it's exceptionally rare. So.
Yeah, and he has some ways to mitigate it. Like, he can just change cards aggressively and usually be okay.
There's one matchup in which it is actually possible for him to lose before he can play. I'm debating if Akuma should actually count in that. I haven't seen enough of it. But, like, 3 matchups are the ones that are, like, theoretically the worst, which are Taisei versus Rimulus, Taisei versus... where is he? Akuma, and of course Taisei versus Iaquis. And I have seen Iaquis kill Taisei in 3 turns. And I know that Rimulus theoretically can, and Akuma theoretically can. I just haven't seen those matchups enough to be sure. But, like, Iaquis, I've seen it happen. I know it can happen.
And Taisei can't really do anything about it.
Like, if Taisei doesn't draw block, dive, Ashen Claws, actually even Ashen Claws does help, but like block, dive, or I think that's it, or like focus, I guess. Then Iaquis might just hit for 7 damage twice in a row.
Yep.
But it's extremely rare, and like I said, that is actually part of the appeal of playing Taisei, is that you're walking on the edge, and that's thrilling. Like, that's fun.
But yeah, almost returning to the question, almost everyone I've ever met who's played both games ultimately picks one. They ultimately pick BattleCon or they pick Exceed, and they don't tend to not that they don't tend to overlap, but they tend to buy one sort of. They tend to back the one on Kickstarter, or they tend to buy into one more fully.
Yep. That's probably true because most people are going to prefer one experience over the other. Some people want to really play the headspace game of I'm
Yeah, if
going
you're
to
someone like Charles or Aliphant,
yeah, like
then you love math and you love doing matrices in your head, and you love BattleCon for that reason.
yep, and you like if it when I've seen people who when I tell them that the game is perfect information, which is BattleCon is perfect information. That means that you know all of your opponent's options. They know all of your options. There's no shuffling, like no randomization. Like their eyes light up at that. And if you're the kind of person whose eyes light up when you hear that phrase, perfect information, when you know that it's a strategy game with simultaneous action selection and bluffing and mind games as well, then BattleCon is amazing and it's a wonderful experience. There's BattleCon still gives me something that Exceed cannot, and that is I still treasure it. I'm one of the few people who still loves like both games pretty much equally, purely because of a mechanic in BattleCon that does not exist in Exceed. Um, Exceed is my favorite game, and BattleCon isn't anymore, because most of the time, I can play, like, because it, how do I say it? I can play 3 games of Exceed in the time it takes to play 1 game in BattleCon. So, if I'm having comparable amounts of fun in both games, I will get more enjoyment out of my Exceed experience because I play more games in the same amount of time. It's like it's really
Simple
a
math.
utilitarian thing. Like it takes up to an hour to play a game of BattleCon. It takes 20 minutes to play a game of Exceed. Um,
Yeah. It only takes 30 minutes to play a game of BCO because you are constantly on a timer.
because you have timers, yes, and that's why I do play a decent amount of BCO. Um,
Yeah.
and that helps a lot.
Um, yeah. If you know what you're doing, the timers are great. If you're learning, they're terrible.
Yeah, and they're very intimidating in that case. Um,
And there's a very sort of loud, aggressive noise that lets you know that
oh yes,
oh no, you don't know what to do.
talk, tick, talk. Yeah. Oh, and there's a
Yeah.
character who I think traumatized a friend of mine because every character has voice lines in BCO, and they'll say them, and one type of voice line is the time is running out line, and a lot of characters have very amusing remarks that they make, or at least I think they're amusing. Um, you know, infinite was it infinite wisdom does not imply infinite patience, um,
Yeah.
and so on. But the one
Yeah.
that's traumatized people is when Null 7 goes, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, and just starts yelling.
Yeah. I mean, several things that Seven says could traumatize people, but
Yes.
the timer
She's
is
good.
a very stressful element. But sometimes that edge makes you play better.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Like,
I'm glad for it purely because otherwise games would take twice as long.
yeah, because sometimes there's that one important beat that someone wants to spend 10 minutes on, and those beats are great,
Mhm.
but that beat might last the same amount of time as an entire game of Exceed.
Yeah, yeah. Like my record longest game of Exceed was like, I don't know, hour plus. I don't remember anymore. My record
Yeah,
longest game of BattleCon is like 4 hours. Like we spent frickin' forever.
yeah.
And
Just
memory
because you
tends to
spend 15
exaggerate.
minutes every beat just staring at the cards going, there are 14 options here.
Yeah, but my average game length is still like 20 minutes Exceed, like 15, 20 minutes Exceed, and then like 45 minutes BattleCon. Like it's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
Let me read up
Um,
on chat
no
comments.
disrespect to BattleCon.
Oh, thank you, Senpai Chan.
That can be an awesome experience, but it is one that most people want sparingly.
Yes, like the super long game that was I don't remember if it was actually 4 hours, but it was at least more than 2 hours. I'm sure of that. Like that was an amazing experience because it was this, incredibly like it was brutal in the best sense. It was like every beat it was we are going at it trying to kill each other, doing our darndest to do it, and playing each of our like mains, our best characters, and it was really satisfying. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I lost that game, but I don't even remember for sure because I just remember I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I
Gaspar
mean, it's the
Janine.
same reason that people love Twilight Imperium. They
There
love
you
to
go.
go into an experience, spend 8 hours on it,
Hmm.
and just bask in the afterglow.
Yep. But I don't want to do that all that often.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Similarly to why people don't play Twilight Imperium,
yep.
you don't want to play BattleCon necessarily every day.
Yeah, definitely not a multi-hour game of it. All right,
Yeah,
let me read up on. Okay, so Senpai-chan asked, "Does each character have variable playstyles? Can I play Taiso aggro or defensively?" Yes, that is very true. Um,
yeah,
like the way that I describe characters is not the be-all, end-all canonical truth. I absolutely have disagreements with other very prominent and experienced members of the fandom about how characters work. I
I
still
mean,
say this guy, Joffrey, is not supposed to be a brawler. I say he's a zoner. A friend of mine very much disagrees.
yeah,
Imogene.
that's
Infamously, I have the opposite Imogene playstyle of many people. Not the opposite, but like I play
yeah.
her
But
wrong.
there's a quite famous sort of I wouldn't call it conflict, but
The disparity, or the you mean the dichotomy,
a,
right?
a difference of opinion between Boogie's Imogene and Dee's Imogene.
Yeah. So these are the two types of player, as Blue Blue Llama has coined the term. He's another community member. There are two types of player: Imogenes and Hekatonkiers. Imogenes don't want to play Hekatonkier. Hekatonkiers don't want to play Imogene. It's like Boogie will play Imogene until he can flip, and then he'll be a Hekatonkier and he'll be happy. I will play Imogene as long as I can, and I'll flip if I have to, and I don't want to, because I don't want to play Hekatonkier. I want to play Imogene.
Yeah, they play radically differently, and
Yeah, but even on front
it
side, there are different ways to play Imogene. And like
yeah
Taisei, I think Taisei is super aggro because the local that I have who plays Taisei, who mains Taisei, plays him extremely breakneck aggressively, except sometimes that when he throws me by doing it different. But the Taisei main on the server that I know actually says Taisei is super like tanky and defensive, and not the same as that at all.
yeah not risky, not yeah
Hmm.
there are as many different ways to play characters as there are players.
Hmm. Yeah, and I find
Uh,
season 2 to be the most dynamic of them all. Like my favorite thing about my favorite characters is the sense that like I have probably played more Imogene than anyone on the planet, and I've probably played her more than I played any other character in the game. And I still feel like I have not 100% mastered her because
yeah,
there's so much like the cards look simple in many cases, but there's so much nuance to those decisions when and how you make them. And how to optimize for your exceed if you need to use it, when you need to use it, and how to
yeah.
use
Well,
every tool
and
in your kit.
particularly with a lot of season two characters,
Yeah, season 2
there
is
are
where
a
that
lot of
shines.
there are a lot of people who say like you should value this transformation, not that transformation, or
Hmm.
you should exceed or not exceed at this point.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, actually,
Uh,
right here staring me in the face is Umina, who is probably the most significant example in my opinion, because Umina doesn't have a line of play. She has a spiderweb of plays. Like,
yeah, she has to switch between lines of play dynamically.
hmm and she's
Um,
she's set up such that you have to like you can't commit to every option at the same time because she has effects that actually conflict with each other. She has a bunch of tools, and you don't want every tool every game. So some things you put engage when in other some games you'll transform them, some games you'll gauge them, some games you will do shenanigans with them that you can do because she is Umina. Um, so like I considered her to have at least 3 major lines of play, and those are just the ones that I can tell, and they are very very different.
yeah, and each matchup's also going to be different. There are oh, well, at least 52 characters in Exceed, in addition to however many customs you want to allow. So there are
Yep,
just using
52 in
official
total.
characters 52 times 51 matchups, or 52 times 52
I was to
matchups
say
if you're
count the
going to
mirror match.
allow
Why
them in.
not?
Yeah. Um, so, and all of those are going to play slightly differently.
Mhm. So speaking of playstyles, Senpai-chan asked a question I think you'll find. I'll direct to you, Andy.
Mm.
Which is Senpai-chan says, I currently only have Shovel Knight and Pookie as my starting decks. I really like Shovel Knight. Any tips on how to play him?
Uh,
Because you've just picked this guy up yourself, or
yeah,
not?
I picked
Yeah.
up Shovel Knight. The big
Not very exciting.
thing I think about Shovel Knight is you, I'm actually gonna pull his kit out
I
because
was trying to, but I picked the wrong bag.
I'm just gonna go
He's a
the
promo,
everyone
isn't he?
bag,
Oh, that works.
um, which takes forever to load because it's the everyone bag.
Hmm.
Uh,
So Saturn, the different ways to play. So for Umina, yes, because Umina is a control character. She's designed to be reactive. Like she wants to adapt her playstyle to whatever her opponent does to specifically counter them. For other characters, that's not true. For Joffrey, for Taisei, um, like
I think Iakis is probably the best example of someone who doesn't land.
yeah. So for Yaquis, for Selinka, um, for Minato, my goodness, Minato. Yeah,
There are at least 6 documented ways, distinct lines of play for Minato.
he is crazy. Um, but it's funny because they're all very just like very much very like, oh, this is a super clear line of play, and he just has a bunch of them somehow, and they don't even feel cluttered. It's like, oh yeah, this all works with this kid. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few characters that are
Uh,
like more straightforward than others. Umina is probably the least straightforward, or more, the least linear, because Umina is a control character who's designed to be able to just counter anything if she knows what it is.
yeah. Yeah, she
Um,
does what your opponent doesn't want her to do.
right. And then there are characters who are designed to present a dominant threat and then force the opponent to deal with it. The chief
Great
example of which is
example.
probably Seijun. Um,
Yeah. Sagen
uh,
threatens to hit you in the face with a billion power or a billion speed.
yep. And then you find a way to deal with that. Now, once you learn how to deal with that, Seijun needs to adapt her play, and Seijun can adapt her play. Um, but she's a boss character. Like she's supposed to feel super scary and threatening. So I generally would consider her to be less dynamic than most, but she does have the tools to adapt her playstyle how she needs to. Um,
Yeah, she can play at range, she can play melee, she can
high hand or low hands, she
play.
doesn't have to flip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so, yeah, to answer the Shovel Knight question,
and
the
then
way
make
that
a
I play
comment,
Shovel Knight,
please.
the goal is play this card as much as possible. Play the boost. Because that boost is terrifying.
That's true.
And there are very few characters who are going to have any chance of winning a strike in which you have that boost up.
Hmm.
Um, that boost is really going to center your whole playstyle. But he has other ones that are really scary. This is another excellent boost, and a card that lets him play at any range. The big thing about Shovel Knight is that your resource game is something that you have to manage very carefully. Um, the way that I like to play him is I like to threaten big speed attacks that are very, very safe. Um, so things that are, 6 speed at range 4, or, 9 speed. Things that I'm going to get my hit in. What are you going to do about it?
Hmm.
Um,
The drawback of that playstyle is that relying too much on safety means you can actually run out of damage.
yeah, if I'm not striking enough, um, he's a character who draws a lot of cards. So it can be a problem if you aren't striking enough and actually hitting. If someone dies past you, or if someone crosses out against a slow attack, then you can very quickly find that you have run out of boosts and run out of cards. And that is a very dangerous situation to be in, because A, you have a bunch of attacks that kill you. Alchemy Coin being the main culprit. If you draw through your whole deck twice, you're done. So Alchemy Coin can be a trap, because I had a game against D the other day, where I had an Alchemy Coin in deck, and so I could not Wild Swing because Alchemy Coin would kill me.
Yep, we were standing far enough away that if he swung into it, he would draw past his second reshuffle, which kills you.
Yeah. I Even if all he did was stand there and whiff an attack, if Alchemy Coin hit him, even if the attack would be lethal otherwise, it would have killed me before I did damage.
Yep, hit effects resolve before damage is dealt. That is important.
Yeah. So you have to be very, very careful using your move action, because that draw is not optional. And you have to be very, very careful using your draw effects, particularly this boost. Because that boost draws you a lot of cards, and it's a very good boost. But you have to be careful about if you're going to run out of cards. And you could, hypothetically, though this isn't my playstyle, play Shovel Knight super duper aggressively. And just strike all the time and draw lots of cards and, threaten these giant threatening things because you're playing one or two really good boosts and then striking. But you have to balance drawing cards and actually doing damage.
So Saturn asks, does an alchemy coin work well with gear or chaos sphere? Do you mean the boost Saturn, or because yeah, like the boost slash mercilessly, the +3 power here is fantastic on gear at ranges where your opponent doesn't have a cross, or chaos sphere because it has nearly infinite confirm.
Yeah, it's also excellent with itself. I would almost rather play the boost and then strike with it than I would EX it. Because that is an enormous range.
Yeah, I would definitely not EX unless I had to cover incoming threat.
Yeah. The other thing that Shovel Knight does is, if your opponent knows that Justice in Spades is a thing you want to do, you're going to boost, and now they have to strike into you or tech it, because if they let you keep a boost up, you might just play this and kill them.
Right. So it's very common to have, like, for him to play one boost, the opponent does something unrelated, and then because he's threatening Justice in Spades and they didn't do anything about it, you can do something like reading their dive, because they're probably holding a tech for when Justice in Spades comes out. Or they're holding a block, and you can, play Spike if you're at an appropriate range.
Yeah.
So I don't understand your question about... Yeah, I don't understand what you're trying to ask, sorry, so if you could rephrase that, that'd be great. But yeah, I would say that, like, I always want to threaten Flare Wands, and I never want to play it, because it just doesn't have any payout attached. But it's so good.
The only thing that Flare Wand does is beat.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
a
an awesome thing for an attack to do.
Yeah, beating cross is super rude.
And it is a cross, so it can do things like step out of range of sweeps that are incoming. But man, zero power is not good.
Yep. It is.
And you don't want to spend those resources.
But that's about all it is.
Yeah. One of the things that you very quickly learn if you play a fair amount of Shovel Knight is that spending resources is a real problem for you, because it means you have to draw cards. And if you have to draw more cards, it means you're going to deck out faster. I've lost more games as Shovel Knight by decking out than by losing all my life.
Yep, I run into the same problem. So Saturn says, since Alchemy Coin can get you a lot of cards, the two cards that use Force work well with it, right? Flare Wand and Chaos Sphere. Oh, got it. Yeah, so if you're on high hands already, like nearing hand size, and you play Alchemy Coin and then draw over, sure, these are decent payouts. I would rather pay out on the boost on Dig Tirelessly, but obviously you don't want to play a boost if you're over hand size, because if you end your turn without striking, you'll have to draw and then discard, and that's, inconvenient.
Yeah. The one nice thing about the boost on Dig Tirelessly is it is a hit effect, so you can order it however you want with Alchemy Coin.
Oh yes, that's a terrifying combo. I had that happen to me when Reggie played Shovel earlier.
Yeah, so you can play Alchemy Coin as a strike while you have that boost up. You draw cards first, and then you spend what you want. And that's a really nice payout. It's not how I tend to play them, because I tend to play Alchemy Coin for boost. And I tend to want to play Mobile Gear for its absurdly fast, absurdly long range attack.
Wait, did I play against
Um,
Reggie's Shovel Knight or did I play against your Shovel Knight?
I did not play Shovel Knight against you tonight.
Okay.
I
Uh,
suggested Shovel Knight for Reggie.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
Mobile Gear is very, very scary, and it breaks the speed curve in all kinds of gross ways.
Not by that much. It's one over at range 4. At range 3, it's actually on
Um,
curve, but it's still intimidating for him to have an extra on curve attack because his attack shapes are weird.
yeah, and he also is. If you try to boost speed against him and contest him that way, he will be.
Yeah,
Um,
he will happily boost war with you. Like boost wars are a thing he can do.
yeah, if your opponent starts boosting, you just boost back at them and go, "Want to do this?" And then they go no because they're not very, very silly.
Hmm. Yep. I
But
really
yeah,
like.
that's generally how I play him.
Yeah, I
I
really
play
like
him
this
as a
attack. This is probably my favorite attack of his as an actual attack, which is a pity because I really like this boost.
yeah. I don't really play it much. When I play it, I'll EX it, and it's terrifying
Hmm. Yeah, 11266 is that sure is a stat line.
because it beats or trades even with every.
Hmm. Except
Which
grasp if the opponent has room to push you too.
yeah, at range 1. At range 2, it hits or trades even with every.
Yes, at range 2 it is crazy.
Um, but I really don't want to EX it because I would rather you like because his attack shapes are weird. He needs to move around a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that boost, and also I just like having 2 instances of 5 damage better than I like having 1 instance of 6 damage, specifically on him because of his difficulty closing games.
Yeah,
Saturn
fair
says,
enough.
Discord guys, probably including us, we're saying Shovel Knight is weak. Why would that be? Well, it's what we're saying right now. It's that
He decks out a lot.
he decks out. Like, it's not that he's actually weak in terms of losing strikes. He has a lot of tools. He's evasive, safe, defensive, very effective at staying alive, not dying to damage. However, he can run out of cards, and like
Yeah,
that
when
is a
you're playing
significant.
against Shovel Knight, what you're doing is you're racing his ability to deal damage against your ability, against his ability to have a deck.
Right. It's like if an opponent is also if an opponent's trying to stall, trying to stay back, trying to like just absorb his payouts with block, with you know,
Yeah,
crossing
even
out
just with
or
focus and with crossing out.
yeah, whatever they can, then he's going to struggle to close games. He absolutely can, and we're seeing more and more now that this problem, now that people like know this, people are learning how to play with it. But like his most obvious and intuitive lines of play all end in him running out of cards, and that
Yeah,
is that means that right now he like has kind of reputation as probably not being great because it's so easy to do that. So that makes him
yeah,
like harder to play. And
yeah. It's not necessarily that he's weak, but he is hard to play well.
right. By the same token, like Sea Viper in season 3 has a reputation as being weak, but she's really just like a hard character. Like she has
Mm.
plenty of awesome effects, but
Yeah,
it's non-trivial to execute them.
there are a lot of characters who look weak when you play 5 games with them, and then you play 50 games with them, and you start to realize how they work, and he and they get very, very strong.
Hmm. Yep.
Um,
And people are still discovering new tech all the time. Like
yeah, like
in that sense, this is very much a fighting game.
yeah, even characters from season 1 are not evolved. For a long time, Vincent was regarded as the worst character in Exceed.
Yep.
And
We knew it. Like it was
yeah,
known.
we it was absolutely known for
Like
forever
2.5
that
years.
that he was the worst character in Exceed. And then like a week or so ago, I think Marco came in and beat one of the better characters in the game with Vincent. And now people are starting to rethink Vincent and thinking, is Vincent actually weak, or have we just not figured him out yet?
Yeah, so there were
And
there
did no
were
one bother to try because he was just regarded as weak?
hmm Yeah, so Marcos Vincent beat my Reese, who is considered middling to strong. Uh, and then he went 0-1 against Guile, who is currently regarded as very strong.
Yeah,
Um,
arguably the strongest in his.
yeah, people are really wondering if Guile is like overpowered at the moment. And then he took down Caden 21-0.
Uh, Caden being very strong.
Well, we don't know that
Well,
either. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
nobody knows anymore.
strong. Yeah, strong to
Oh,
you know.
right, and there was also the
Um,
Mei game. That was actually the most shocking, because Vincent is a
yeah,
character, or sorry, Mei Lian's a character that we again know, right? We know Mei Lian is the strongest
just so
unbanned
strong and
character.
broken.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
incredibly good, and Vincent took her down to 2 life before she killed him. She did win, but two
but not by
life.
a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
so
So we're
you know,
still having our peoples.
sometimes the entire community can be wrong about something for years.
Yep. Oh man, Eugenia was great. That didn't last a full year, or maybe it lasted right about a year. But like everyone knew
Yeah,
Eugenia was terrible. She was the worst character in season 2, and then bloody Bitcoins showed up. I don't know if he's still watching, um,
yeah,
and was like, everyone says this transformation is bad. Like conventional wisdom is this transformation is terrible, and you shouldn't use it. I have an idea, and he set up and he went undefeated in a weekly tournament. So that was that was enlightening, and we were like, I guess Eugenia isn't bad. Oh yeah, the other
yeah.
big one was Eva. Like everyone knew that Eva. Oh, for those of you who don't know, I have card alters in this mod, so this is not Eva's actual art. But yeah, like was Eva and Vincent were known to be the worst characters in the game, and then at Worlds 2017, I think, maybe,
Something
uh,
like that.
yeah, I think I was 17. Anyway, somebody tied for first place, and they mained Eva. Eva was their main character, and they played her, and that's the character that they rode to tie for first. And we were like, well, who's the other guy playing? Well, the other guy was playing a character who is now banned for being overpowered. So we're like,
Yeah,
so Eva competed with Juno. Like, okay, what happened
yeah,
here? Well,
yeah.
turns
The
out,
worst character in the game competed with quite possibly the best character in the game.
yeah, so good that she is actually banned. And we're
Yeah,
like, well, it turns out that if you're really, really good at Exceed, you can pilot Eva just fine. Um, like,
yeah.
she's fine.
Um,
Oh man.
so yeah, in my opinion, the community is wrong about Shovel Knight. But I will say that Shovel Knight has a very high skill floor because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to kill yourself.
Makes sense.
Um,
I feel that way about Galdred.
yeah,
People think he's weak. I don't think he's at all weak. In my local meta, he's never been considered weak. He has consistency issues, which are a like competitive tier problem.
and
If you want to be super competitive, then consistency is a big deal. Um,
yeah, well, and season two across the board kind of has some consistency issues because transport
I don't
thing
know.
a lot of characters lean on.
I main Remilus.
Yeah,
She's
Remless also has a lot of consistency because of being able to do things like guarantee EXs and
yeah.
yeah,
Remy and Jeanette are probably the two most consistent characters in the game. I forget who's
yeah.
third, but like,
Um,
it's hilarious.
but some season two characters do have some consistency. The fact that they lean so heavily on their transformation,
Hmm.
um, and that's another balancing factor for transformations is that they are you have to get them, you have to draw them.
Hmm. Well, you you want to. I mean, you can function
Yeah,
without, but
yeah. If
you
you're
really want to.
Galdred, you have to.
If you're Galdred, you have to. Galdred with no transformations is a very very sad man. Um,
Yeah,
but that's what he's built for.
yeah.
Um,
And he can go get them mostly fine.
yeah. The saddest Galdred I've ever heard of was Andrel told me he was watching one of the well he was the judge, so no surprise, but he was watching like one of the final games somewhere in the last round at Gen Con last year, and he was sitting by the Galdred player, so he saw Galdred's opening hand, all normals. He mulled his hand, all normals.
Yep,
It
that's a very sad Daltrid.
was rough.
I mean, turn one, you change cards 5 or 6,
Yeah,
and
that, I
just
mean that's
hope
what
to draw your transformations.
that's all he can do. Yeah. All right. Oh yeah, no worries, Senpai-chan. The stream will be archived, and then it will be uploaded to YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I save my streams.
Yeah. Um, most of them things are playlisted, so if you want to see a specific matchup, it's probably there. If
Yeah,
you
the
want to see a
playlists are
specific
organized.
stream, it's there.
Yeah, so like there's the Gal versus World Series, and then there's an event for a night where it's just casual games, and they're all separated by night. But then there's also the matchup playlists, which are season 1 versus season 1, season 1 versus season 2, S2 versus S3, whatever. It's
Yeah,
this versus
etc.
that.